Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Jenny White.
Good morning, Michael Grande.
All right. Get my name out there.
What? That's my name. Don't wear it out. Remember me?
It's been all those years removing myself.
Your dog wants to be on the podcast.
Yeah, she does.
She's been on the last couple of mornings. She's wanted to be on the podcast.
Yeah.
Did you curse at her? Is that why you had to turn off your microphone?
Yeah. I'll get her out of the way. Too busy looking at squirrels.
Oh, we had the same problem over here, as you well know. Yes. Does she catch them?
Sometimes.
Well, we've had that happen a couple of times, and you'll be walking across the yard and go, "Oh, dead squirrel. Hello. Yeah. Good morning." I never see her do it, though. I've never seen her actually do that, but it would sure be interesting to see that happen. Boy, don't you know that squirrel doesn't know what hit him. It's like, whoa. So how come you have not corrected me the last 45 times I've said that next weekend is Memorial Day weekend?
I just thought you were waiting for the great anticipation, just keeping it in the news there.
It was the funniest thing. Somebody said something in the family yesterday about, Memorial Day week. No, I got an email and it said Memorial Day weekend. I went, what are they talking about? This weekend isn't Memorial Day weekend. I swear. I mean,
you're so busy almost winning awards for the intense information that you're bringing out on this podcast that no one else brings out.
Hey,
so you can't keep track of time also.
It's we, buddy, because if I fall, you fall. So let's make this.
I hope you win some big, national award, some kind of, big reporting award for breaking the news that no one else wants to hear about.
I wish you would.
Yeah, see here. Citizen Press, it's up to us. I'm wearing that shirt on purpose.
Oh, let me see. Back up.
See, Citizen
nice.
Press.
Nice.
Go this way.
Yeah, there you go.
See? No one else is going to do it, Jenny. No one else is going to talk about all this stuff.
Well, I think the thing that really fascinates me, well, I don't think fascinates me, kind of pisses me off. We have so many things that are going on that how many places have you seen anything like the stuff that we did on the solar deal?
Nowhere. Nobody.
Or the humanure thing, or the wind turbines. It's like nobody wants to get out the opposing view to any of this. Or maybe it is everybody's just being blocked.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of money in all this stuff. I mean, look at the huge amounts of money in solar and in the bio industry and in OTA and all this stuff. I mean, there's this. It all comes down to money. And when you talk about money, you're going into the high rolling people in politics and government, and they're not going to let it. They don't want that stuff out.
But see, when you say money, I think everybody, I mean, not just me. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think most people at this point think free market money. They're not thinking government money.
No,
But
it's our money.
we're only dealing in government money at this point. I mean, that's what's so scary about this whole thing, and why what we're doing is so important, because the government is usurping.
Yeah.
They're stealing our money.
Yeah.
And then they're using it to do all of this crap that is absolutely just pinning us down further. It's not helping us.
Yeah.
It's just making us more enslaved to government using our own money.
Well, and I'll tell you, I'll just add one little caveat to that. They're not only stealing our money currently, they're stealing our money in the future. That's what all this debt is. I mean, this debt is our future money.
Yeah.
When you think about it,
kids' money.
Think about just $1 trillion. I've talked about this once before. People really can't grasp how big that number is. If you put 1 trillion seconds, how many years do you think 1 trillion seconds is, Jenny?
Oh, I'd have to do the division.
Let's
I mean, honestly,
remember.
I don't have a clue.
Take a guess. Just take a guess. How many years? Trillion seconds. Trillion seconds tick by. How many years is it?
25.
25? More like 25,000.
Really?
It's literally like 31,780 years is 1 trillion seconds.
Really?
That's how big 1 trillion is.
Maybe that's why I end up overspending when I go to the store, because I'm like, oh, look, this is only $1.50. I clearly am not kidding. That whole thing about little things that add up to make big things.
Yeah.
Well, do you have a financial moment for us before we bring the ladies on? Because this is going to be you talk about a show that's going to blow a lot of things out of the water.
Well, yeah,
that nobody's reporting on. I think that's going to be this show right here. So, do you have any financial advice before we begin?
No, I mean, nothing that we haven't already covered. I mean, we're seeing, major uptick in gold and silver, real assets, things like that. I mean, the dollar's going to be tough, but as of now, the private Federal Reserve is just going to keep pumping the markets. All, the debt market, the bond market, the equities market, they're all just pumping because they know free money is still in the system from the government. So
and then
there's nothing we can really do about it.
Then you've got people like me who are 15 minutes away from retirement and going, I don't know what to do with my money. I don't have any money for retirement. What am I going to do?
Yeah. So it's a tough situation. I mean, it really is.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
We could spend a whole show on that. I don't want to waste any of the girls' time here.
The ladies.
We've got some. Yeah, the ladies. I mean.
All right. So I'm going to bring them in. I'm going to bring in Miss Kelly and Miss Whitney. Good morning, ladies. Kelly, hold on a second. Let me fix it. I can't unmute your mic. You muted your mic. I can't unmute it for you. I'm not your mama, Kelly.
Jenny, when you're ready to retire, that is what I do for a living. So I'll be here for you.
Well, we may need to make an appointment after we're done. But I mean, it's true. We lost Kelly. I'm not sure what happened there.
Uh-oh. She'll be back, I'm sure.
She'll be back. We'll just wait on her a second. Yeah, I think that's the trick is, it's how to make money on your money when money isn't worth anything.
Well, it's funny that, we talk about this because some of the things that sound like conspiracy fringe ideas, when I have to do webinars and trainings on how to prepare my clients for retirement, you'd be surprised how much of this stuff gets brought up and how fragile the whole system is, because they're coming from a place, insurance companies are coming from a place where they're just trying to tell you, make sure people know these things might happen. And a lot of it comes back to federal government taxation and how much they really could pump up the gas on how much they could start taking from people. And when it comes to retirement, and I don't know if I've mentioned this to you, Jenny, but there's, not to be political about right or left, but Biden has a policy that he's trying to implement that would limit the amount of money that people are even allowed to save for retirement.
Well, and see, but that's, I may have to check this voicemail. So I'm going to buzz off of here for a second. You and Michael. Oh, there's Kelly. Okay. I was thinking cool. Kelly was calling in. So I was like, oh, what happened?
There she is.
There she is.
I have no idea what happened. I didn't touch anything. It just all of a sudden said my device is disconnected. And I was like, I don't know.
What were you talking about? Fringe things?
Well, just like whenever I talk about
they disconnected Kelly is what I was thinking.
About what's happening with America. Sometimes I start to sound like a conspiracy theorist, and I understand that because it does sound a little wacky. But why am I being told in webinars with insurance companies that are training me to teach people how to prepare for retirement? Why are they telling me to warn my clients about these things if it's a conspiracy?
Well, I think the problem is it's not a conspiracy. That's the issue. Hey, okay, so let's find out. So Kelly, Whitney, I think Whitney, did you introduce me to Kelly?
Yes. Well, Kelly's the one that found you.
Oh, that's right. Kelly found me.
Yeah, I was looking for dark money. I was looking to see who was behind some packs and who was connected. And I came across your graphic and I was like, oh, yeah, this is exactly what we've been working on. So it was helpful.
Well, I think just to start out for people who haven't heard me mention this book 400 times, The Killing of Uncle Sam, Michael ruined me by having me read that book. And you find out how interconnected and webbed together so many of these elites were in the beginning. And then it just branched out from there. So what we're seeing and what you're getting ready to talk to us about is sadly nothing new. This isn't anything new. But the trick is it's been buried for a long time, because people either don't want to talk about it because they somehow benefit from it. And that's the majority of what's going on in the legislature. They all benefit from it. So they don't want to talk about it because you can't make it stop if you benefit from it. So that's a problem. But I think that the issue is that so many of these things that are interconnected, we're still not ready to actually see. So today, this podcast was what I think for Michael and I both, and I'm sure for you ladies as well, this is the point in time where we need to get people to understand that they've got to open their eyes and see what's going on around them, under their feet, and in this state. So Kelly, why don't you start off and tell us, because you've got a slide program for us this morning, and I want you to tell us, kind of give us some background on that, you and Whitney both.
So, I don't know, Whitney, do you want to jump in there, explain what we're going to talk about today?
Well, Kelly and I met because of the Access program, which was announced by Kevin Stitt in February 2022. And I would like to thank you, Kevin Stitt, because I love Kelly very much, and she's been a great addition to my life.
Same.
But, yeah, I mean, we've really grown a great friendship. But Kelly is a fantastic researcher, and so she is going to show us a little bit more about what's been going on with property around.
Now,
Access.
what is the Access program?
So Access, Yeah, access
ahead.
program is, I can't remember what the acronym even stands for, like
Oh, it's an
connecting communities, blah, blah, blah. They say it's about safety, but obviously there's more to it than that.
This is an
And
Oklahoma Turnpike Authority
yes,
program. Okay.
Oklahoma Turnpike Authority on February 22nd, 2022, announced this new access program. And this is their new Turnpike expansion that is supposed to go through Cleveland County. And they have a few other little projects that are included in it, like widening the Turner and adding some interchanges to some other turnpikes around the state. But the majority of the program is focused on expanding the toll roads through Cleveland County, which it's almost entirely in Norman. It's going to go across the northern part of Norman and all the way down the eastern side, down to Purcell. But
well, and I forgot to mention, Kelly, you and Whitney both are with the PikeOff OTA, or Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation.
Yes, that's right.
Right.
So this was a shock to us. Our house is almost in the path. It'll be about 400 feet from our front door if it actually goes through. And
Kelly, you muted yourself.
You muted yourself. I don't think I can fix it. I can't. It says your mic isn't connected. Uh-oh.
Go to StreamYard, see if that will work. Well,
Yeah.
What she was getting to is the access program is going through a lot of rural Norman. So a lot of people who bought their properties had it in writing that there was going to be limits to how much growth could occur and how much expansion could happen. And they had, these different plans involving the water and involving the just land use in general. So it's not that it's just cutting through Norman, it's cutting through rural farmland that is currently being used for, farming and for purposes that were intended not just by people, but by the city to be limiting the amount of growth that can happen.
So are they literally then rewriting city code?
It's almost like they're jumping right over the city and just doing whatever they want to do from the bureaucracy level of government that doesn't even involve the city.
Okay. Well, and let me say something about that. So I hate to keep bringing this up, but this literally is where I learned so much about what's going on in the state, was when I was mayor. Mm-hmm. And I was shocked to find out, because I originally thought when I ran that what would happen is, as the mayor, you would then have some control, or be at least part of the control of what was happening in your own city. And I was shocked to find out that the city can write further code, and it can actually write its own zoning laws and restrictions, or remove zoning laws and restrictions, but it can't overwrite Oklahoma law. Mm-hmm. Well, to me, that was shocking, because if you can't overwrite Oklahoma law for something that actually affects your city, that would then embetter your city, what's the point then exactly?
My representative, Danny Sterling, who is awesome. I love Danny. He's one of the good ones up there. But he found out about the program that's going to cut through his district while he was, I think he said he was watering his cows, and he got the news alert. So
really,
they didn't even involve the representatives. They didn't involve anybody. It was all backdoor, closed door dealing.
How can, and now the OTA is a stand-alone governmental agency, correct?
Mm-hmm. They call it it's a state entity.
So the OTA is a state entity. Do you know exactly what that means?
It means that they don't have to follow the state constitution, in my opinion, because they don't have to actually go and get a vote of the people when they take on state debt. Usually, if you're going to take on, major debt, you've got to have everybody's involvement. They don't have to do that. They can go This $5 billion project, mind you, has now turned into a $7 billion project. So
Well,
they don't
what's
have
$2
to
million,
get our approval.
Whitney? Stop bitching about a couple $1,000,000.
Billion with a B.
Oh, billion?
Yes.
Mother of pearl. Okay, well, Kelly, before we lose you again, let's get it. Because I don't think somebody I'm to the point now where I think somebody really literally does not want this podcast to happen. So let's get your program up.
Okay,
and
let's do it.
All right.
All right.
I'm excited. And I'm actually a little jealous because what I've seen is beautiful and my slide programs look like a 5-year-old did them, but yours look beautiful. So I'm excited to see this whole thing.
Okay, so it's going to be funky for just a minute, but it will be fine after we get it going.
Okay. I believe you. You're one of the few people I believe.
Okay, can you see everything okay there?
I cannot. Hold on. Oh, got it. Okay.
There we go.
Bada bing. We're ready to go.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I can't see you guys now, but so
Okay.
if for some reason my computer ejects my my microphone again, then I have to turn everything off and turn it all back on.
Oh
So
my
if you lose me,
God.
just
Oh,
text me, I
God.
guess.
Okay.
Oh, and we're on the wrong screen.
Oh, we
So-
are.
Yeah, we're on the right screen now. Can you see the American Dream?
Yes, I can.
Our pretty little farmhouse.
Yes.
So a lot of the families in Norman and Cleveland County that are going to be impacted, and actually with almost all of the new expansion projects that the OTA does, they take it through rural farmland. And they say the reason for that is because they only have to deal with a handful of landowners, and it makes the process faster, which now we know is absolutely not true.
Wow.
We've gone through and calculated how many people will be impacted, and it'll be about 600 homes. And if you imagine, and that's just in Cleveland County, and if you can imagine how, that there's, 3, 4, 5 people in each home, just how many people are going to be displaced by this turnpike is just atrocious.
Yeah.
And since I have it situated like this, I can't see my notes. So Whitney, you might have to pop in and remind me what I'm supposed to talk about each place here. But
so the only thing that, we really had here is like, we have this American dream. Well, it's a dream. It's not real. And in reality, it's almost an American nightmare, because the closer you get to the bureaucratic state of our government, you start to realize how tyrannical everything is. And what did the people come over here to America for in the first place?
Well, I mean, first place to escape religious persecution, but then yes, as things got worse and King George kept, putting his thumb on their heads, absolutely. It was to get away from the tyranny of the crown, where they had no skin in the game, right? I mean, they weren't allowed to decide anything, but the crown was telling them what to do and still taking their money and not allowing them a voice in their government. And so haven't we come full circle?
yes, and actually in some of my research, I read that their battle cry was actually give me liberty and property, not liberty and democracy.
Yeah.
So how far we've come from protecting property rights in America. But anyway, so we start with the American dream, and in a lot of families here in Cleveland County, this is what we've done. We've tried to, build a house, establish our roots. We've bonded with our neighbors, and this is something Whitney and I talked about at length the other day. And just this is one thing that I feel like is really overlooked in all of this uprooting people from their homes and their communities, is that you get established, you start developing your roots, and you get to know your neighbors. And your kids are involved at school in sports and in activities, and you really start to grow with your community, and you rely on these people, and just having them in your life every day is just part of your routine, and it means something, and it's important. It's a piece of who you are.
It builds relationship, and it builds capital between you and the people around you. So if you're out of town and your dog gets out or something, like your neighbors are important to you. And when you just yank people out of those social capital situations, it is very, very traumatizing.
Well, and I'm going to up that. People who live in the country are more self-sufficient than those people who live in the city. The bonds that you create in a country environment allow you to develop that resilience and that self-sufficiency. These things are being frowned on today. They want government control over everybody. So those of us in the country who are learning self-reliance and self-sufficiency are not going along with their program.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, are we being targeted because of that? We're not
Well,
not following the rules.
That OTA targets these areas.
Yes, and typically they target small groups at a time, so there's not as much pushback. But this time, they poked the bear, and they probably picked too many people to pick on at the same time. So anyway, so that was their problem. But anyway, so moving on. So the OTA comes in, and then all of a sudden, you've got all of these connections with your neighbors and your community, and you've really invested in. You've got a church family. You're really invested in your community, and then boom, out of nowhere, your dream is shattered, and all for a silly, stupid turnpike. So they come in and they use eminent domain to take your property. Let's see here.
I have a good quote here. This is from Ilya Salmon, which is one of the leading scholars on eminent domain. And he finishes his book and says, the judiciary's neglect of property rights has allowed powerful interest groups to use the grasping hand of government to expropriate property from the poor, minorities, and the politically weak. And that's where I think OTA screwed up this time. We're not politically weak. We have made a huge stride, especially at the Capitol. We've had, multiple laws that have been passed. And even though Kevin Stitt wants to keep pushing us down and kicking us down, we're still not going to back down. And we do have some political strength. So I do think that there's hope here in Cleveland County, but it is a very, very hard battle.
Yeah. So they use eminent domain to come in and take your property. And what's interesting to me is the OTA, they talk a good game and they say, very few of our cases actually end up in the condemnation process. Most people will settle with us, which we've come to find is absolutely not true at all.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I was just looking through the Kickapoo condemnation cases, and there were 170 parcels that were voted on to be condemned to go through the condemnation process on December 5th, I believe it was, of 2017. Just weeks before Christmas.
If you go to OSCN and just look up Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, you will see so many cases. It is absolutely ridiculous. And just the amount that have went to the appellate court is absolutely ridiculous. And just this week, Tim Gatz said in the whatever meeting that was, that 10 to 15% of properties taken by the OTA have to go through a condemnation process. 10 to 15% is kind of high.
Yes, it's very high. I mean, like I said, 170 parcels were condemned in December of 2017 just for the Kickapoo. And so, I followed some of those just to see how long they were in the court system, and you would be surprised. The majority of those were in the court system for at least a year or longer. And there are actually, I believe, 5, possibly 4, although the Brewer case isn't completely settled just yet, I don't think. But there are still 5 open cases. And that road has been built for 3 or 4 years now. And yet some of these families still are being drugged through the process, which is terrible.
Holy cow. Okay. So they took their properties from them via eminent domain, and eminent domain basically says that there is some compelling state reason. That's the bottom line. The state has to prove their case that it's a compelling reason to force these people off of their property. I'm absolutely aghast. So the court system didn't even adjudicate these cases quickly enough to be able.
Oh no.
Right.
Oh my gosh, you
No,
guys, that's
and
awful.
let me take this a step further. Justice Winchester's wife is in Stitt's cabinet. So he's one of the Supreme Court justices, and his wife is in the governor's cabinet. She's not going, they're not going to rule with the people. They're going to rule with the tyranny every time. Actually, there is one case that's been in the news lately where the Brewers have been awarded a hefty amount of money. What was it, Kelly? 3 million?
Yeah, it was three something. I want to say it was 3.5, 3.7 million, something like that.
Yeah,
But
that's a good
they haven't received it yet. And if I understand correctly, they haven't entered in the final judgment because the OTA can't seem to agree on the wording that the Brewers attorney used when he entered the judgment. He's stuck on property rights, I believe, actually is what the litigation said. Something about they're disputing that property rights are not supposed to be included in what the jury was supposed to take into consideration or something. It was
case is
Yeah.
over property rights.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, I'd have to pull it up and read it to you word for word to make sure I quote it correctly. But that was my understanding, was that they're hung up on one tiny little word, one word. That was what it was, one word.
Yeah, but hold on though, Kelly. That one word has absolute ramifications that could damage any kind of government intervention over the citizenry. So it's not just a word, it's something that forces them into a situation that they're not going to be able to do what they want anymore.
That's exactly right. They're worried about setting precedent and then things not going their way in the future, because that gives landowners actually more rights over their properties. I know that's crazy, but anyway, so it's my understanding that even though the jury came back with their verdict back in March, I think it was March 25th or in sometime the end of March, they still have not received their final payment. And we still are unsure whether or not the Turnpike Authority will appeal, because if I understand correctly, once that verdict, or once the judicial or whatever, the last filing is submitted to the court, then from that date forward, they have 30 days to decide whether they're going to appeal. And so far, they can't agree on the terminology of this last paper that needs to be filed. So who knows when it will actually end. I was looking at one of the other cases, and it was a year from the time that last paper was filed until it was actually marked closed.
And I think people, I think people are going to think to themselves, well, this doesn't really have anything to do with me. I mean, the government is after my land. I live in a planned community in Norman, or Oklahoma City or wherever. This doesn't really apply to me. That, I think, is wherein the problem that we have. People today are literally unable to look at what's going on and apply that to their situation, look long term, and figure out how, once you allow the government authority over anything, it suddenly has authority over your situation, whether you like it or not, and it knocks on your door. So that's why it's so important for people to pay attention to this kind of thing.
Yes.
Follow it along and push back with the people that are involved, because if you don't, it will be you. It will be your land. It will be your whatever, your property, whatever that is. It will happen to you.
Imagine if you were one of those people that went and took out a second mortgage because the interest rates were low. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden they come in and they're like, oh, we have to take your property. And so we're going to give you your fair market value that our little guys decided on. And then now, what if that doesn't cover both of your mortgages?
Right.
That's where I think this needs to really settle in with people. What if tomorrow someone came and said, I'm going to take your house and I'm going to give you fair market value? Would you be okay?
That's a good point.
Well, and there's a lot of other things that go along with that as well. And so something that was brought up at that meeting with the mayor, the Norman mayor, the other night, it's just such a great point. And I think it's one that most people overlook, because the Turnpike Authority, their narrative is, we take very good care of our landowners, and we often give them above market value, and they're usually very happy. Well, no, they're actually very not happy, because the OTA, I mean, while they do supposedly give you, money to cover your moving costs, there are so many costs associated with moving and relocating that you don't think about. Like, for example, if you had to put your stuff in storage while you're looking for a new home, because they don't give you much time. Once the judge says, okay, your property is condemned, you have 30 days to get out, and they take control. And so one of the other things that I think is overlooked are all of those other costs associated with moving, and your time that you have to take off work to pack your stuff, and time to, unpack in the new place, time to look for a new house. But then also the monetary value of this also is, you look at your property taxes. If you've lived in your home for 20 or 30 years, when you bought, and obviously home prices have gone up significantly over the past 10, 15, 20 years. So, your ad valorem taxes only go up a certain percentage each year. And so it pays to keep your house for a long time. So if you've lived there, let's say 20 years, you're paying a pretty low percentage compared to your neighbor who might have just moved into a house that's comparable to yours, that moved in last year. Their property taxes are going to be higher because they started at a higher base rate than you did. And so when you move, you're losing that, because while they might give you a whole lot of money, supposedly a whole lot of money, to find another home, you're going to be paying at that base rate, which is significantly higher than probably what you were already paying if you had just stayed where you were. And so that's an additional tax, if you will, that our homeowners are looking at. So it's kind of all part of the machine that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. So let's get back to this. So they just slap these condemnation proceedings on you out of nowhere. Then they come in and they just immediately clear the land. We have been told that the OTA and ODOT as well, they don't like to leave houses up because it's a visual reminder of what was taken from someone. So they like to just get it out of sight, out of mind, pretend like it never happened. So they'll just jump in there and clear that land. And then they build the road. And I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but I actually pulled some of the blueprints from the Kickapoo. Yep. That's an actual, I don't know if you can see my screen or not, but down here at the bottom, that was actually, and so these little red boxes, those are the parcels that was the right of way that was taken from some poor family members there on the Kickapoo. But yeah, so they build the road, and look at that, cha-ching, cha-ching. We've got our contractor here, our engineer, got money flowing out of his pockets because they are getting ready to be in the money. So then let's talk about what happens after the road is built. So once the road's built, and mind you, I'm going to go back one slide, actually, you can see that they acquired all of this property down here, not just the part that they needed, but they took all of this extra. So then what are they going to do? Well, they take this extra and they sell it off at an auction. And this is where things start to get real interesting. And this is as if my eyes weren't opened enough with the access program being announced and being right next door to it. But on, I think it was June the 9th and 10th of 2022, so just a few months later, the OTA used the Daykill auction house to auction off some of the surplus property from the Kickapoo. And I just on a whim decided to go in and watch the process. And oh my gosh, it was heartbreaking. It was eye-opening. I literally cried when I left because it was so horrible. I could see the full circle coming into view of how this process works. And it was like sharks in the water, and they finally were getting their payoff. And so because the people that were there, obviously there were a lot of developers there were real estate developers there, there were politicians there were bankers there, and there were family members of former OTA board members there. So that was kind of interesting.
Let me pause you for 1 second, Kelly. Yeah. So one of the bills that we actually got through this session that the governor signed into law, I think it's House Bill 3159. I'll check here in just a second, but the bill basically says if a government entity comes in and takes your property with eminent domain, if they do not have to use the entire piece of your property and they decide they're going to sell it off, they have to come to you first, and you get the first right of refusal. And we did get that signed into law this session. So I'm so proud of the team. We have a group of people who work very, very hard going up to the Capitol and advocating for these things. But that was important because we experienced and we saw some people, and Kelly has a very good story that she can tell, but we saw some people that, you know, they were told, okay, if this property is going to go up for sale, we're going to come to you first. Well, that was a lie. And so now we have a law that if they take your property, they've got to come to you first, and you have a first right of refusal. OTA came out and told the Daily Oklahoman or whoever that they don't think that they're supposed to follow that law because it doesn't apply to them, but we wrote it because of them. So it does apply to them, and I am looking forward to hopefully our court enforcing that.
Yes. So like Whitney was saying, so when I was at the daycare auction, I actually was speaking with a gentleman who was there, and his neighbor, is this on the Kickapoo, by the way? So his neighbor, she lost all of her property to the Turnpike, but there was quite a bit of surplus left over. She was an elderly lady, and she ended up moving to Kansas to be closer with her family, to help take care of her. But so this gentleman, he was, you know, also a senior. And so he told me that he had been farming and leasing his neighbor's property to farm it. And that was part of his income. And he had been doing this for many, many years. And then when the Turnpike Authority took her property, obviously he started losing income because he couldn't farm it anymore. And so the Turnpike Authority had told him, hey, no problem. You know what, when we, you know, auction this up for sale, or when we determine how much we don't need and have surplus determined, then we will contact you first. And since you're an adjacent landowner, and we'll offer it to you to buy before we offer it at public auction. And he said they never contacted him. The first he heard of this property going up was when he read about the daycare auction that was coming up. So he showed up to try to bid on it, and the opening bid was more than he could afford. And so he didn't even bid on it. And so the gentleman who did acquire that property and won at the daycare auction just happened to be sitting right in front of me. And so when the auction was over, I don't even know why I said this, because this is so not like me to want to talk to people I don't know, but I actually introduced myself to this gentleman and was like, you know, I don't know that I could ever do anything with this, but, you know, maybe we could try to buy this property back from you for this gentleman at some point in the future. So I got his card and went home and started looking into things. And that really piqued my interest in, okay, so who bought all of these properties? Because this one was kind of a shocker to me, but I hesitate whether I should even say it or not, but he's actually, well, I don't mind though. It's fine. So he is actually the chairman of the Oklahoma City Planning Commission. And so he was there buying surplus property on the Kickapoo. So I mean, there's nothing illegal about that, but it just seems
has familial ties to the OTA. We're talking about the LaForges. So Stride Bank, Rusty LaForge, that's who got that property. And so, like she said, there's nothing illegal about it, but it just seems a little bit on the fringe of what's ethical. Do you know beforehand that this kind of stuff is going on?
So he's on, Rusty LaForge is on the Oklahoma City Planning Commission.
Yes.
And he was related how by somebody on the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority?
No, not on the Turnpike Authority.
Okay.
So his what I'm assuming is his father is Stephen LaForge, who is a current ODOT commissioner.
And a former OTA.
And a former OTA board member, yes.
So there's no way that they would have known about the Kickapoo or anything going through that area.
I mean,
you know, and I hear what you're saying. It's not illegal. Insider trading is illegal, but maybe we need to figure out how to change terminology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just definitely leaves you with an icky feeling like, well, okay.
So if you're privileged to be on a board or a planning commission, See, so many people don't want to be on the planning commission, but then the people who are on planning commission actually know what's being planned. And if you know what's being planned in advance, if there's no law or no ethical boundary that prevents you from acting on what you know is going to be planned, then you can do what you would like.
Yeah, so we're gonna skip ahead just a little bit, just so you can kind of see. So this, if you go to Oklahoma County Clerk page, their website, you can just type in grantor and then type in Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, and this is going to pull up all of the people who have recently purchased, and this is just a handful of them, all of the different people who purchased property from the Turnpike Authority. So you can assume this is all surplus. And then if you look at the date, you can kind of see, okay, well, this was from at that day kill auction in June of 2022. They were told that they had 30 or 60 days to close, I believe it was, on their properties. But I don't know if you can just kind of scroll through here and see if any of these ring any bells. I can tell you some of them. So Jim Investments is actually Home Creations. And I've looked all of these up on the Oklahoma Secretary of State to see who owns the entities. That's just how I'm getting some of that information there. But there we have Rusty LaForge. And he seemed like a very nice man when I talked with him very, very briefly at the day kill auction. So I should mention that as well. And like, again, he didn't do anything illegal. It just seems kind of strange.
Recognize, I watch Channel 5 every night. I watch the news and Wheel of Fortune every night. And so John Colbert, he's the Wolfpack lawyers, the billboard lawyers.
Right. So, okay, we're going to go ahead and hop onto that next slide. And so I feel like we're harping on Rusty LaForge, even though I didn't really mean to do that. But it was just, his name came up multiple times. So that's kind of where things go here. But so the Turnpike Authority actually bought the Girl Scouts camp, which is Camp Cookie Land. And I'm not sure if you guys remember seeing this in the news, and I can't verify this, but I was told by one of our supporters that the Girl Scout leaders ended up pulling in some of their Girl Scouts, and they basically set them all down at this meeting and said, look, so the Turnpike Authority needs Cookie Land, and if we give them Cookie Land, they won't have to go another route and take more homes. So would you guys be willing to give up Cookie Land, and then we'll take the money and buy a new camp and let those people stay in their homes, which is horrible. You should never put a decision like that on a child. Those are decisions that adults should be making. These kids did not need to,
well, don't get me started on the Girl Scouts, okay? Let's
Exactly. So one thing that was interesting when I was looking up into the Girl Scouts land was I came across this name just popped up again. And so Rusty LaForge, and I don't think this was at the exact same time, but it was pretty darn close. He was actually on a board member on the Girl Scout board, which I just thought was kind of strange that it's kind of coming full circle. He's on this board. The Girl Scouts lose their camp, and then he comes in the end and buys surplus for this Turnpike. He did not buy Cookie Land. That did not happen. But anyway, the name just kind of came up multiple times. I thought it was kind of interesting. But this one is also interesting. So Cookie Land, this is Randy Goodman, and he has several different entities. One of which is Randstand Development, and the other is Tasalgi. And I may be butchering that name. I'm not sure. But so Salgi. Okay, gotcha. So he purchased several of the surplus properties at the day kill auction, and mind you, it's taken a while to put all this together because that information is not available immediately. You have to wait for all the deeds to be filed with the secretary or the county clerk, and then go and cross check and see who all of these different entities belong to or register to and that sort of thing. So it takes a little investigation on the back end, but just trying to get an idea of who these people are and what do they do with this property, and so Mr. Goodman here, he was he was a very outspoken advocate of the Eastern Oklahoma County Turnpike, which eventually became the Kickapoo. And you'll see here, he wrote an op-ed in the Daily Oklahoman. He says, "I have attended city council meetings at Choctaw and Hera where residents would object to new development because they didn't want anything infringing on their quote unquote country living." And then I just felt like this was interesting. So he's pushing economic development. He thinks this is going to bring all this economic development. He says, "I have 8 acres in Hera and own other property in the targeted area. I support the Turnpike and am eager for its completion. For the sake of future growth, Oklahoma County leaders must ensure the Eastern Oklahoma County Loop is completed and does not become a victim of provincialism." Okay.
Oh, he's the one who put his land up as a possibility for the new jail out here in Eastern Oklahoma.
Yes. And do you know what property?
My goodness, how can I girls, I don't know. I think you're way off base here. I mean, come on. It's not illegal for you to displace people from their homes and then benefit off of the destruction of their property. Right? I mean, come on. Holy cow.
But it's not.
And yes, and so the frustration. It isn't illegal, but you know what? And I there is a John Adams quote about how the Constitution is made only for a moral people. And if we're not a moral people, then the Constitution, he said something like, and then the Constitution will be lost as a whale goes through a net or something like that, because of the fact that you have to have morals and ethics, because the whole Constitution was designed around being taking self-care, taking care of yourself, but then also taking care of your neighbor, right? And being responsible citizens, having personal responsibility. We don't have personal responsibility anymore because the government's there with its hand out playing big brother, and we're too damn lazy to do anything but suck off the teat of the government. And in doing that, we've lost all our morals, all our ethics. These people think that somehow this is okay and they justify it by doing this. Well, we're providing economic development. We're giving people jobs. No, they're not giving people jobs. They're not. Sorry.
Right. Well, no, you touched on something really interesting. So you touched on something interesting there too, though, is that, just like you said, well, I was talking earlier about how you get connected to your neighbors and with your church and your kids at school. It's hard to be self-reliant, and, when they uproot you, you don't have those connections with those people anymore. And so it's harder to fight back when you don't have the support of your neighbors and your friends. And so that's just one more way that they're isolating people and uprooting them and pushing them out. So anyway, so I thought it was kind of interesting what you're talking about. So our next slide, though, we're getting into what you were saying too. And this is where things kind of came together full circle for me. And this was what appeared in my head. And I came to realize after watching the Daykill auction go down was that you have businessmen, whether it's the politicians or the bankers or the developers or whoever it is, they donate their money to these political action committees, which if any of you will follow Jenni's show here, you'll know that's dark money right there. So then the PACs will donate over here to our political candidate, and our political candidate has been pushed by the lobbyists like Bobby Stem's group, the Developer Association. And so the politician's going to stand up here and say infrastructure, construction, development, and they will pass legislation that gives the authority more power. And they will prevent legislation that restores power to the landowners and the citizens. And that's why, and we've seen that over and over again, where they would just refuse to hear our bills. We had really good bills to put forward that we thought needed to be heard, and they refused to hear them if they thought there was any chance they were going to go through, or that, that it was going to give the citizens more power or protections. And so
by they, she's really referring to Senator Haste. Shout out. He's the one that really wants to prevent all this stuff, because Broken Arrow is the fastest growing community in Oklahoma right now. So we've had better luck in the House. I will say that. So I don't want to call all the legislators out because there are some really good ones in
True.
there, but there are some thorns, and haste is one of them.
Yes, for sure. So then you just get on this little highway here, and the rest of it goes is that, the private property is seized or eminent domain. They build the turnpike. Then they auction off the surplus at pennies on the dollar. One of our researchers has done a deep dive into how much was paid for these properties versus how much they were worth. And because the Turnpike Authority, before they auction it off, they will do an evaluation on them and determine the value. And so we've looked at that, and she has determined that most of these properties sell for about 15% under fair market value. So that's just kind of interesting that they're selling it off super cheap. And most of the people who show up to buy these properties are the developers, the politicians, the bankers, the people who are in the know. And so anyway, and then the developers then are going to turn that property that we were forced off of into huge profits. And so it kind of comes full circle for them. What once consisted of one home now contains dozens of homes, and they're making boatloads of money off that. So that money goes right back to Mr. Politician, banker, developer over here, which then he's going to throw right back into a PAC that's going to go right back to our legislature. And so, as you can see, we have this giant circle here.
Repeat.
Rinse and repeat. And so what's interesting too here is that our lawmakers are picking winners and losers. And just in case anybody wasn't aware, we, the citizens, are not the winners. The winners are the developers, the real estate investors, the bankers, the engineering guys, the road construction guys, the politicians. Those are the winners. The losers, no. They say this is your greatest investment. And man, all of us, 600 of us here in Cleveland County, picked the wrong one.
So just to kind of bring this home a little bit, you have a governor, he was elected, and most people loved him because he was pro-business. Okay. So he's a very pro-business governor. And that used to be decades ago, a pro-business anybody. That was great because having business there allows us to have the opportunity to have jobs, brings money into the state coffers. So they're not necessarily having to tax the individuals so much. There were reasons to be pro-business. Now, what pro-business actually means is state government is in the business of business. And what that means is that the state government will use your tax dollars to pick winners and losers by giving tax credits, putting laws into place that actually help the people do this kind of thing. So we've moved from a society in which personal property rights and personal rights were forefront in government because it was protection of property rights and personal individual rights. That was the reason that governments were instituted among men, to quote a founder. And now what we're doing is we've erased all of that so that we can push businesses to the forefront because they're more important, because they're providing the rest of us peons employment, essentially. So it's literally entirely shifted and Julianne Romanello, who's a regular on the show, has said this numerous times. We are literally shifting our form of government to a who used the term? Did you use the term kleptocracy?
It's definitely a kleptocracy.
Yeah.
It's crony capitalism. I mean, 100%. It's crony capitalism.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a government of the people, and for the people. It's not any of that anymore. It's government of the business, for the business, of the business. And you've got Governor Stitt, who's just happy as a clam about this. And somebody said I saw this in one of my forums the other day, I'm shocked that with a Republican majority, we're not protecting more individual rights. And I went, well, now you know that Republicans aren't for individual rights. That's not what they're for. They're for businesses, which is a kleptocracy, which becomes a tyranny. And that's what we're seeing right now.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I think the further I have dug into this, it's become very clear to me that these people here, the developers, the real estate investors, the bankers, you know, they're shoving money into a politician, but this politician is just a puppet. Yeah. This politician works for these guys. He does not work for us.
Correct.
And you were talking about Governor Stitt, and I thought this is kind of off topic, but not. You know, a lot of people, especially Republicans, and like, because you were talking about, he seems to be a business guy, and they kind of,
you said it 100 million times.
Yes, but and he also claims to be for, you know, citizens' private property rights and whatnot. But one thing that I have found with him, if you dig deep enough, you will realize that he's a bait and switcher, and he doesn't mean what he says. And I'll give you a perfect example. And because this sounded really good, and I remember when this came out, it was right after he was elected, and he said, no more government entities cannot donate money to, they can't hire lobbyists anymore. And so, you know, no more, our tax dollars shouldn't be spent on going to special interest groups. So that sounds really good, right? I mean, he made a huge deal out of this. Well, what he didn't tell you was that he also then allowed for each government agency to hire within a legislative liaison, which if you look at the Oklahoma Ethics Commission, if you look at the definitions of a legislative liaison and a lobbyist, they're exactly the same, with the exception of a legislative liaison is hired by a government agency. That's it. So they still have lobbyists, and they are there at the Capitol every day. And not only are they they used to be an outside entity, but now they're just hired within. So they actually have a full-time staff member working against the public for their special interest, which I just thought was kind of interesting. He's not transparent and everything.
And it's the same way in schools. I mean, don't forget that if you have a problem, then and you have to hire an attorney, you're spending your money on that attorney, while the school or the state, if you're, you know, gonna sue the state in any capacity, you're suing twice, because the state's using your money to sue you to try to defend your suit against them that you're also having to pay for.
Yeah.
We're screwed.
That's very true. Yep. So I'll just try to, I'm sorry, I keep getting off topic here, but so your house is the key to their profits. They can take your house, your one house, your 15 acres, your 20 acres, your 60 acres, and they can turn that into an entire neighborhood. And think of all the money they're going to make off that.
Let me interject for just 1 second, because a gentleman from New Jersey, my husband's from New Jersey, but a gentleman from New Jersey was talking to my husband about a year or two ago, and they got on the topic of the Turnpike Authority, and he was like, you need to tell your wife to read The Power Broker. Mm-hmm. Well, that is a like 1,200 page, huge book. Huge.
That's a tome.
So good. And I want to tell you guys one little part of it. So this is Robert Moses. This is like in the 50s when he's building better highways for New York City. And the author of this book, Robert Caro, says that he did more than any other single urban official to encourage more hesitant officials to launch major highway building programs in their cities. So he went around the nation and encouraged all this stuff. And he did more than any other person to set the standards for urban expressway designs. So who profits from this? Who profits from the bonds, deposits, contracts, premiums, retainers, jobs, payoffs, bribes, grease? It's the banks, the unions, the contractors, the venal politicians, the venal or short-sighted public officials who put profit from public works above the public interest, and they bend the city's government to their will. And they do this in a regimented lockstep. And it symbolizes the behind-the-scenes, subtle, selfish pressure that spells power in any city. They will build bridges and highways and freeways and expressways and turnpikes and nothing else. So think about that. What if we were building places where people actually wanted to be? What if we were building things where we get out of our cars and we're actually together doing stuff? They are so focused on moving people from place to place. They're completely missing the mark on what we could accomplish if we would stop building nothing but highways.
No, I disagree with you. They are not missing the mark, Whitney. I'm sorry, they're not. This is the whole plan in the first place. What did you just say? Divide and conquer, bud. That's what this is all about. You get people off their property. You get people, doing anything where they're not together. Absolutely. Why do you think we have this partisan Republican and Democrat thing in the first place? It's just to create something to fight at each other about. So is all this racial nonsense and everything else. The way these people win, and it's all of these people that are on the screen right there. The way they win is by getting us peons just fighting at each other like junkyard dogs. That's how this works.
Yeah. And I think that's why they typically only, target small areas at a time, because that's fewer people that can push back. And, you think if you're the only one, then it's pointless to even try. But
hey, Kelly, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How come there aren't the people on that at all anywhere? You didn't put the people in there.
Yeah.
They're swirling down the drain.
That goes back to this slide over here. We are the losers and the other guys are the winners. So that's why. And I thought this quote from James Madison was pretty spot on. That is not a just government, nor is property secure under it, where the property which a man has in his personal safety and personal liberty is violated by arbitrary seizures of one class for the services of the rest.
And that is what this has gone on for eons.
Yes. And that is exactly what happens here. They say that they're justifying taking your home and your property and your neighbor's home and your neighbor's property for the greater good, for a turnpike that is supposedly going to lead to safer roads and less congestion. But anyway, okay, so whatever, that's baloney. So I think we can actually skip that one and go straight to this. So this is just kind of another breakdown of what happens. So we've got the private landowner has this peaceful acreage. Then the OTA comes in, acquires part of this property. They sell off the surplus. The developers hold on to it for a little while and wait for the value to go up. And then they either flip it and cash out, or they develop it and make bukus of money. And I thought was interesting too is, so here on the cash out part where it says sold down there, some of the property that was purchased in 2022 at that Daykill auction has already changed hands once or twice, which I just thought was kind of interesting. Like they didn't wait long at all to flip it. And it makes you wonder, Whitney and I were talking, were those purchases straw man purchases? Were they really just buying for someone else they knew they were going to flip it to? I don't know. Why didn't they want to show their faces to buy in the first place,
So if you're on a city planning commission, or you're on the board of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, or you sit on any kind of a planning commission, and you know what's going to happen, and you can benefit if you get out ahead of it and purchase land in these particular areas, would you want your name associated with it? I mean, you don't have ethics because you're going to do this anyway. I mean, it doesn't matter. But would you want to put your name on that? No, you're going to want to go to somebody, and maybe it's your neighbor across the street, and you develop an LLC with your neighbor across the street, or you ask the neighbor to, or the neighbor has one. I was just making this up. I'd never heard this before.
Now, what has happened?
And that's exactly what happened. So, yeah.
That really does happen. So, and that happened back in, I'm not going to mention any names here because we'll protect the innocent. Actually, they are innocent because what they did was not illegal. But so back in 2004, you can see here, October of 2004, there was a board member who had just resigned about 12, 18 months prior to this time period from the OTA board. And he had and I don't know if he did this on purpose or if it was just a coincidence, but it was a rather interesting coincidence if it was. But so the neighbor of this former board member purchased some surplus property, and we found all of this information in the OTA agendas and board minutes. So this is all public record. Anybody can go find it. It's not hidden. We didn't have to dig hard for it. So they sold this parcel for $465,000. There was only one bid, and it just happened to be this former board member's next door neighbor. That's interesting. So that was in October of 2004 that the board approved this surplus sale, and when it was bid on. Then in December, a couple months later, is when the winning bidder, the neighbor, took possession of this. And then a little over a month later, the winning bidder uses a quitclaim deed to transfer it to the former board member. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? So then we fast forward, and that board member was like, okay, well, we're going to purchase a little more. So this time he actually purchases it himself using his LLC, of course. So then in April of 2015, well, let me back up. I forgot an important part. So this board member now owns this 24 acres or whatever parcel there of surplus property on the H.E. Bailey, and they're kind of around in Chickasha area. And they get this parcel turned into a TIF. So I would imagine the putting the infrastructure together to then market this property later was pretty minimal. So, he had a little help from the community there getting it together.
What a TIF is quickly.
So TIF is tax increment financing, where the city basically kind of puts up a loan for the developer to invest in developing the property, getting the utilities and that sort of stuff set up. So did I explain it very well? I probably didn't explain that one very well.
I mean, the city does give them, it's a tax break. So they get a tax break basically if they set up a TIF. Yeah.
Yeah. So we get this deal of, only paid, what did I say? It was $465,000 for this property in 2005. Okay. In 2015, they sell the property to a developer actually from Norman, which was really interesting, for $3.7 million.
That's a nice return on investment.
That is
nice ROI.
Over $3 million profit for holding onto your property for 10 years. So that's the kind of stuff that, just really makes you step back and kind of scratch your head and say, well, how did we get here? This is not what America is supposed to be like. And why do we protect this? Why are our lawmakers in Oklahoma protecting this kind of behavior? Because that property should have been given back to the original landowner, and that original landowner should be the one reaping that $3.5 million windfall of money from his property.
Well,
versus.
Kelly, let me ask you, why do you suppose lawmakers won't run any bills to exempt themselves from getting PAC money?
My guess would be because this former landowner of this property that missed out on the $3.5 million revenue from developing or flipping it later, they're not the ones donating to the PACs. It's probably this former board member or some of his cronies.
Well, but the bottom line is you can't get self-interested people. Self-interested people will never deny their own self-interest. They don't have the ethics or morals to do that. That's why they're self-interested in the first place. So
I heard a really good quote yesterday, and this
that wasn't a really good quote, Whitney?
That was really good. It was, but this ties back into what I started with today when I was telling you guys that, like, when I'm being continually educated about insurance and I'm being told that there's a big reckoning coming, the quote that I heard said that when you have a legal system and ethics and they keep getting further and further apart in a complex system, they're eventually going to crash the system. Yeah. And that's what I fear is on the horizon.
Oh, us too. We just talked about that, didn't we, Michael? We just talked about that on Wednesday.
Yep. So that's the end of our little slideshow presentation. I could probably talk for hours on all of this stuff, though. And I had to do the slideshow so that I would keep myself from only talking about the things I was supposed to talk about and not the things that I probably shouldn't talk about. But anyway, so that's the end of that part.
Let me say something to that. So when I first began my descent into dark money, so many people said, I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't use any names. You're going to get in trouble. Somebody's going to sue you. We, the people, and I'm just going to start calling us we the people. We, the people, have got to get away from this mindset of somebody's going to get mad at us if fill in the blank. At this point, we're at the end of the spear and we're going to get run through. And if we don't start calling out some of this narcissistic behavior and saying who's doing it, we're not going to get anywhere, because you still have a bunch of people who are convinced that everything's fine. I can still get my Thunder tickets. I can still go to the movies. I can still stream anything I want from Netflix. So everything's great. We if we don't start calling people out, and when I did my program, Kelly and Whitney, when you've done your programs, you're not making things up off the top of your head. You're not just, I don't like this person, so I'm going to go after them. You're talking about legal issues that are pointing to specific people, or that you can prove specific people have ties to. That's sorry, but
through public record.
Yes. It is. So I think, and the problem is just what you said. We're getting so far away from what justice is in the legal system. Justice now is not really on the side of the people. It's on the side of, I guess, whoever has the most money or power. and that does tend to, cause a system that was one of the things that caused Rome's demise right there. Right. They had a huge Senate, but then nobody would follow the law. And that was kind of the problem, and crashed everything to the ground. But the bottom line is if public record shows someone to be involved in something, and it may not even be illegal like we've talked about here, but it, by God, is immoral. It is certainly unethical. Then we need to just point that out and know that what we're saying, we have evidence to back up. So, that's the way it is. But we've got to quit being worried about upsetting people. I'm way past that point.
And I'm not rooting against us. I'm rooting for America. I'm rooting for Oklahoma. Like, I care because I care. It's not that I'm like wanting the ship to go down, but we have to bring some sunshine and some light to the truth in order for things to get back on a good track. Like, the frequency is just too out of whack right now. And I feel like I have hope and faith that it can get better, but it's going to take people to start cooperating and working together and, actually seeing what's going on.
Yeah, we've got to open people's eyes to this, the land grabs and the power and control of some of these people and the conflicts of interest that are there. Like, I probably should have talked about this a little bit some too, but we talked about the court system and how that seems to be unfair for the landowners. And one of the things that we uncovered during the Supreme Court validation of the bonds was that, so they filed their petition with the Supreme Court back in, I guess it was August of 2022. And then in February of 2023, G. Carl Gibson, who is a former OTA board member, he was actually on the board while the Driving Forward program was going on. He was, and so just barely off the board. He actually bought the other half of a duplex that he now shares with Justice Winchester, who was the justice of the Supreme Court who wrote the judicial determination in favor of validating the bonds for the Turnpike Authority. And we asked him, our attorneys asked him to please step aside and, recuse himself from that decision because of the conflict of interest. I mean, he literally lives in the same townhouse as a former OTA board member. And they had the nerve to come back and tell us that that's something we should have brought to their attention long before. It had just happened.
Wow.
There was no time to bring that, and the only reason we caught it was because I was doing some land research, and I think I just stumbled across it. And so the whole thing was just really strange. But there's all this conflict of interest and inside information that is traded here and there, and clearly not looking out for our best interests. So we have a lot of cleanup to do with our court system and our legislature, for sure.
Well, ladies, I so appreciate you not just being on and talking about this stuff, but all of the work that you guys are doing, and everybody at PikeOff OTA who's really dropping everything that they have going on so that they can try to get something to happen here. It's just so frustrating. And our governor has 2 more years. I mean, we can't even do anything about that. We've got 2 more years of this pro-business governor who is going to continue to throw people under the bus. And it's interesting to me. We have a bill currently in the legislature that would stop the World Health Organization from dictating how to behave to citizens of Oklahoma. And we have a Republican majority, right?
So-called.
So why aren't we getting that passed then? I mean, if Republicans are for freedom, if Republicans are for, conservative principles, why isn't that getting passed? Why couldn't we, Michael, why couldn't we get that law passed that would move school board elections to the regular general election?
Yeah. Should be pretty simple if you've got a conservative majority base, but obviously all these people are corrupt in some.
Has anybody seen the budget that just came out? I could pull it up, but we're already late. Have you seen it, Whitney?
I saw they just came up. It was like a $12 billion or $13 billion budget.
Look, I mean, I'm on those
Not yet.
lists, right? So I got Senator Treat's breakdown of what the budget was. I went through the budget and I struggled to find even one thing that was constitutional. It's all government giveaways. That's all it is. It's all government.
Did you see Treat and Kevin Wallace pretend to have an argument all across like different medias?
Yeah.
Like they were arguing about each other's pet projects. Like, I don't believe anything that they say. I think it's all theater. Yeah, it's all theater.
Absolutely it is. I mean, just to make us think and I've said this before, that the benevolent grocery tax, we were given that benevolent grocery tax. How benevolent is that really when you'll take my property out from under my feet if I don't pay my taxes for a school that can't even educate 9% of its kids?
So true. It's so true.
I mean, honestly, how benevolent are you, Governor Stitt? How benevolent are you, Republican majority? How benevolent are you? You should have been doing something about property tax eons ago. You should have been doing something about public schools usurping our funds and creating bonds. You want to talk about something bad? How come the people who benefit from bonds, like the contractors, can sit on the boards of the schools that they're getting ready to pass a bond for?
It's so true. Yeah. It's so true.
I'm so beyond sick of all this absolute nonsense. I could come unglued.
And so, Jenni, also kind of what you just said, what about the lawmakers who are preventing bills from being heard or voting against private citizens' property right bills, who are in business with other members of the community who investing in real estate. I won't say any names, but again, it comes back to that full circle of they're keeping the laws in place that that directly benefit them with their real estate investment, because they know then they're going to come back and buy all the surplus.
Well, Kelly, I'm just going to tell you, I don't think you understand how
I probably
legislation works. And let me just enlighten you as to how this works. Kelly, we can't hear every bill. We can't hear every bill. It would just take up way too much time. And, you know, we may have a citizen request, but, you know, that's not really as important. I mean, it's not an economic driver like these, you know, organizations that are donating my campaign that come in and want something. So, Kelly, I think you're just misinformed.
I'm misinformed for sure.
I'm sorry. Do you know how many times I've actually heard that spiel?
Oh,
You need to do that in your NPR voice, Jenny, next time. That'd be even better. You know, the whole problem, you got case law. I mean, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, Kelly, but here again, we've got case law coming in and just trampling the rights and the simplicity of the Constitution. I mean, what does eminent domain go back to? What, the Fifth Amendment?
Yep.
And I think it basically says that they can't take private property for public use unless, you know, there's just compensation. That's what they base all this on. But how is taking that property for the OTA public use in any capacity? I mean, I can't go drive on those roads publicly. I mean, I have to pay. That's a private, you know, or I'm not going to say it's a private organization, but it's not a public use deal.
No, and all those people are bureaucrats. You can't elect Tim Gatz.
right.
How do I get to Tim Gatz? He does whatever the hell he wants.
That's right. That's right.
I can't get to him. I can't vote him out of office. And not only that, but did you guys hear that basically Tim Gatz and Governor Stitt has basically just said, up yours, Supreme Court, up yours, AG, we're just going to go ahead and do whatever we want, just to let you know. So Mr. Gatz is now going to be back on the cabinet for the, I mean, it's just, who doesn't get that this is insane? This is insane world.
Yep.
I think my blood pressure just...
Yeah, I told you. Remember, we need to get that live blood pressure little meter over here on the side of the screen. So as you're speaking, we see just how you're. I
don't know. I mean, honestly, what are you going to do? I guess sometimes I feel like, you know, the people are like my kids. You know, if you get mad enough about it, the kids finally go, "Oh crap, she's really serious." You know, I don't know. I mean, people are not paying attention. And I do think, you know, Whitney, you said something earlier about how, you know, you have hope that things are going to change and that kind of thing. And I think a lot of people have lost hope because at this point in time, you can dig your way out of a certain amount of government bullcrap, but we're buried underneath it so far at this point. You can't shovel it. I mean, you're now going to have to rent a backhoe. So I think it is to the point where some people are just kind of throwing up their hands and going, I guess, you know, I'm just going to do what I can in my neighborhood and wait till it all falls apart, because none of this is sustainable. I mean, it's not. At some point, I really do believe that people are going to have enough of it. I mean, they're going to push a couple of the wrong buttons and people are going to have enough of it.
Well, it scares me, honestly, because I think it was Martin Luther King that said that violence is the voice of the oppressed. Yep. And I'm not a violent person, but I think the oppression is pretty obvious.
Yeah, but lots of people aren't violent. I'm not a violent person, but by God, you are going to push the button. And if you push that button, all bets are off.
So I think we just need to get people to realize that, because, earlier we were talking about how they target one group and then another group kind of in small groups. So people don't realize that it affects them, but it actually does. If I could share my screen one more time, I want to show you something so people can see exactly how this.
Do I need to pull it back up if you share it?
I don't know, you might. I'm just going to put entire screen again because that was the easiest thing, and hopefully it won't cut us off. But okay, can you see
that pipeline?
I don't know. Can you see that?
Yes, I can. It looks fine.
Okay. So back in 2021, just, less than a year before the access program was announced.
Right, where that is.
Okay. So this is I-35 in Norman. And so ODOT was supposed to be doing this in Indian Hills Bridge. They were going to redo the bridge because it is structurally deficient, and it's a terrible bridge. It really is. It needs to be redone. So they had this project in the 8-year work plan that they were going to start working on. But mind you, Tim Gatz was over the OTA and ODOT at the same time. And this is what Mary Bourne was trying to ask about when she was talking with Gatz at the confirmation hearing the other day. And he just breezed right through it like it was nobody's, no big deal. So ODOT had Triad Design, which is an engineering firm, draw up plans for this new bridge. And they put together 4 designs, and the one that ODOT chose was this one. And we received these plans from ODOT themselves through an open records request back in 2022. So as you can see here in the purple, this is what the design said. This is the new proposed right-of-way. That's what they needed. Andy Alligator's right here in yellow. It does not fall within the purple. There was no need for that. ODOT spent $6 million on Andy Alligators. And you know what Mr. Gatz's his response when she asked him, well, why was Andy Alligators purchased when it wasn't in the right-of-way take? And he said, well, sometimes, properties in the area are impacted by, one of our projects, and, that's going to, impact their customers or whatnot. Andy Alligators was closed. There wasn't even anything there anymore. But our government, our transportation department decided that it was a good use of $6 million worth of taxpayer money to buy something they didn't even need. They still don't need it. Maybe for access, it cuts through kind of right here with the new Turnpike design, might cut into a little bit of that property. But what's also interesting is that, you can prove it right here. Over here, it says excess land, 8.53 acres. For parcel number 15. So I pulled up the warranty deed on Andy Alligator's property to see, well, how many acres was it? Well, it was 8.53 acres. It says right there, they don't need any of it. Their own paperwork says they don't need it. So was that a good use of $6 million of taxpayer money? And they say that the OTA needs to come in and take over this, this traffic safety and relieve congestion project that the OTA needs to do, the access program to do those things, because ODOT doesn't have any money. Well, does ODOT maybe not have any money because they're wasting it on things like this? $6 million. I know that's a drop in the bucket for ODOT's money, but come on, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for absolutely nothing.
Do you suppose because Andy Alligators went out of business in Norman?
Yeah, so that's the other piece. Andy Alligators went out of business during COVID while it was forced to be shut down. And now the government comes back and buys their property after they foreclosed.
Well, and it's got that existing structure there. So what's to say that OTA isn't going to turn around and sell it to something and make a profit?
Well,
so maybe we
the
should.
The story goes they want that for a call center. Oh, I'm sorry.
Where are they going to send it to? What now?
The story goes that OTA wants it possibly for a call center. For the Pike Pass call center. Yeah. We don't know that for sure, though. That's just rumor out there. Because there's all these people calling in to talk about their bills. They're being charged for money, for tolls they that weren't there.
Don't get me started on that. I can read you a letter I had to write them about double tolling me. Yes. And let me tell you, that was not an easy situation to get out of. And we don't go into town that often, and my Pike Pass bills out here are between $50 and $75 a month.
Oh,
That's
see,
freaking outrageous.
that's an additional tax.
Oh,
That's
it
ridiculous.
absolutely is. I'm being taxed now to drive on a road that I was promised, if we let them do it, would be free for me.
Yeah.
So are the
Yeah.
government big fat liars? Is OTA a big fat liar? Yep.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. One tiny last bit on this Andy Alligator stuff, and I swear I'll let it go. Although this is my baby, so I harp on it all the time. Any of my PikeOff people that are watching, this is the one I talk about constantly. But if you notice here, so the blue, the red, and the green, those properties do fall within that purple box, and they didn't buy those. Not sure why.
But that's why I'm thinking there's something going on with the Andy Alligators property that's going to benefit OTA somehow or ODOT.
Yep. And then the last little bit of it is that they used what's called an authority order, which means it doesn't go through the normal approval process. And OMES has guidelines on when and how to use an authority order. And they specifically say, don't use it any more than you have to because it lacks transparency and is ripe for fraud. And yet that is what ODOT used to purchase Andy Alligators and some of these other properties down here that you can't see on the map because I cut it off. But yeah, that's what they used.
Let me point out, because this is an excellent example of that. Government will not govern itself.
That's right.
Okay. So if government won't govern itself, here's what that looks like. I'm going to issue an edict. I'm just going to say, now listen, don't do that.
Yeah.
And I can do it. And what are you going to do to me? What are you going to do? Because if I get called on it and OMS calls me in and says, hey, I've said don't do that. Okay. What are they going to do to you? Absolutely nothing. It's the same thing Michael and I have said about laws that are written in this state, and in this country. There are, mounds and mounds of laws. Nobody can follow any of them anymore. And the most brilliant of them are written so that they can never be adjudicated. So they sound great on a page. It's just like our Oklahoma parental rights law. You go into a school and try to make that stand for you. There's no teeth in it. You can't do anything. They'll just go, oh, okay, thanks for letting us know.
Yeah,
Please
I've
strike
actually
through.
heard those exact words, Jenni, multiple times.
Yeah. Kind of like the Turnpike authorities authorized routes, vicinity of what?
Anything I want.
That's right. They're incredibly vague, so they can do whatever they want.
Well, we are over for today, and this actually is Memorial Day weekend. I'm laughing because I still never quite caught on to that. But it is, and I will go ahead and get off for today. But ladies, again, I want to have you back on another time. I mean, that slideshow number one, Kelly, was absolutely beautiful. You and I you're going to teach me how to use Canva so I can do something better than a 4-year-old slide presentation.
No problem.
Lovely. And again, the information that you guys are putting out is great. And we'll always have your back because you guys you understand clearly what's going on, and we're happy to help you get out that information, in any possible way that we can. So thank you, ladies, for being on with us and taking your time. And I hope you guys have a great Memorial Day weekend.
Yes, thank you.
And we will talk to you again soon. So
sounds good. Thanks.
Right, ladies. Bye. Thanks again.
Thank you.
That was, I wished we had some more of we usually have a pretty nice crowd on Wednesdays. We don't quite have as many watching live on Friday. And I know it's a weekend, but for people who miss that, it makes me mad. I mean, we should have had 5 million viewers on that this morning because this is not a partisan thing.
No,
it's not. If you're a Democrat or an independent, you're going to get your land or whatever stolen from you, just like any Republican is. This is not a partisan issue, people. Don't even conceive that it is.
100%.
Everybody's head is on the chopping block here.
Well, and there you go. You know, I just can't stop not thinking about how our rights are being taken in every single way that they can possibly be taken. I mean, that's just, the government is going to figure out how to get by our rights granted to us.
Yeah.
Not by them. Yeah.
By the big guy.
But,
by
you know,
God.
it's kind of like, you know, you hate to say it. Yeah. Kelly and Whitney are just hammering this OTA deal. And thank God they are. But ultimately, unless we just really start getting backed into the corner, the general public gets backed into the corner to where now they're taking neighborhoods, now they're taking towns, you know, whatever it may be. I mean, it's going to come to that at some point. You know, if we don't act now, at least start getting this kind of word out, I mean, it's gonna get so much worse. I mean, it literally is just gonna get so much worse. I mean, they just keep rolling out. And like you said, Jenni, I think you kind of were making the point. We don't have to be so nice. I mean, we're all nice. We just take it. We just take everything and we go on. We forgive. We just go on. I mean, at some point, we've got to really start standing up for ourselves, our rights, our kids, our future, this country. Because if we don't, they're going to roll right over us. I mean, they just continually figure out how to just keep going right over us. You know, whether it's OTA, whether it's COVID, whether it's you know, whatever it's going to be, they're going to just continue to just roll right on top of us.
Well, we've got to quit putting people on pedestals,
Yeah.
and I mean everybody from cops to teachers to legislators. We've got to quit that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can't tell you the number of dirty cop stories I've heard just recently. I mean, just recently. I can't tell you the number of dirty DA stories that I've heard just recently. I mean, nobody, no group, no human being, for Pete's sakes, read the Bible. I mean, do something other than just feel about anything. Human beings are base. They're disgusting. They'll do whatever they need to do to get on top of the other one. Unless you have some kind of higher power that regulates your life, that makes you love your neighbor as yourself, it's dog eat dog, man. It's do whatever you want, because there's, you know, who's going to worry about it?
Yeah.
And that's where we are. I mean,
we've
lost our religion. We've lost our ability to we have become our own gods, you know, and whatever we do is fine. Yeah. And, you know, I'm sick of the Republicans versus Democrats. They're all horrible. Every last one of them.
Well, you're 100% right. That soul searching has gone, instead of this way, it's gone out to government. It's gone out to these agencies. It's gone out to these political organizations and into the liberal mindset of, you know, save the planet and green this and all, you know, all the stuff. Instead of searching, you know, this way, you know, it's gone this way. Yeah. I mean, it's.
Yeah, we were always told it was going to. And you look at history, and that's what happens before nations fall. But unfortunately, it's not just a nation now. It's the entire world, you know, is wrapped up in this. So, you know, again, I don't want to leave the program without hope. We always have hope in Jesus Christ. I mean, we absolutely do. And I don't care if you don't believe that or not. It just is. So we do. And that means that we have to keep doing what we're doing, which is talking about what's going on. And those of you who are active and know what's going on, you have to keep active and you have to share your knowledge, whether it's, you know, you want to or not, whether you're afraid or not, you're going to have to. You know, it's the only way to overcome. We've got to wake people up and get them, you know, understanding what's going on.
100%.
All right. You got any exciting plans for the weekend?
Yeah, it's my son's graduation. We're having a big graduation party tonight.
Oh, nice.
Our family's
Nice.
in town. Who knows who
Oh.
all's going to show up here at the house today? So I got a lot of stuff to do.
All right, we're going to let you go.
Yeah.
So we've already done with graduation, so I'll be in the yard all
Well,
weekend.
this is number 1 of 5.
I know.
Got one
You got a
more to go.
line.
Yeah.
You got a queue.
Yep. Get in line.
All right. Well, Michael, you have a blessed weekend and have a wonderful time celebrating your family and your graduation. And we will see everybody again on next Wednesday. We've got a great lineup for Wednesday. I should have checked first. Who do we have for Wednesday? Hold on. Who do we have for Wednesday? Oh, Maria. Maria's going to come on with Bryce, and we're going to talk about our lawsuit and what happened to that. And boy, I'll tell you what, if you want an instructive idea of the legal system today, that's what you're going to have to watch, because that will be instructive for everybody who tunes in to see exactly what state our legal system is here in Oklahoma. So please be sure to be there on Wednesday and Friday. I may even replay this show yet again. I'm going to probably put it up as many times as I can so people catch it and watch it, because it was great. Yeah. All right, Michael, have a blessed weekend. Everybody else have a blessed weekend and a very safe Memorial Day. And we'll see you again next Wednesday.